Maribel had that voice she used when she thought she was being patient with someone beneath her. Me, in this case. She sat across the dining table, fingers folded like a presenter at a seminar. Kent nodding beside her, like an agreeable assistant. "Mom," she began, "we've been thinking about your retirement." I didn't respond right away. I just stirred my tea. "There's this opportunity." She continued, "It's through Lucinda's network. She's vetted it. It's a high-growth stock portfolio, mostly green tech, with low volatility and great upside." Lucinda. Of course. Kent's mother could have sold gravel to a desert and made them think it was gold dust. But I stayed quiet. Maribel's smile tightened. "We figured if we allocated 90% of your retirement to the fund, we could make it grow at least 8–10% annually. The rest 10% you'd keep. For you, however you want." She said it like she was doing me a favor. "90% of my retirement?" I asked, slowly placing my cup down. "Yes," she said with a practiced ease. "You live alone, Mom. You don't travel, you don't really shop. It's just idle money. This way it'll work for you. For all of us, really." I looked at Kent. He glanced at his phone. No eye contact, no input. "And Lucinda's firm is behind this." Maribel lit up. "She's been in finance for over 20 years. She only brings in family. It's private access." I leaned back in my chair, letting the quiet stretch. Then I smiled. "I'll keep 100%, I said, voice calm. "And you can invest whatever you have." Maribel blinked as if she misheard. "I appreciate the thought," I added, rising from my seat. "But my money doesn't need to work for anyone but me." I didn't wait for her reply. I didn't need to hear whatever Lucinda-approved rebuttal she had lined up. I walked down the hall into the room I'd already packed. My bag was zipped, my documents sorted. I knew that tone in my daughter's voice. It didn't start today. It started the day she stopped asking for my opinion and began assuming I was too old to matter. I picked up my keys, texted Joni that I was on my way, and walked out the front door without looking back. Joni had the front porch light on before I even pulled into the gravel drive. She didn't ask questions when I stepped out of the car with 2 bags and a look that told the story better than words could. She just opened the door, handed me a mug of cinnamon tea, and pointed to the spare room with fresh linens already folded at the foot of the bed. I unpacked slowly that night, not because I had much to sort, just a few outfits, my documents, and the worn notebook I'd carried since retirement, but because I needed the motion. I needed to feel that something, anything, was in my control. The silence in Joni's place was different from the one I left behind. This one was earned, chosen. It didn't press against my chest like judgment. It wrapped around me like peace. But even here, memory had a way of filling the quiet. I remembered the day I tried to teach Maribel how to balance a checkbook. She was 17 and had just gotten her first paycheck from the coffee shop downtown. I sat beside her at the kitchen table, showing her how to list expenses, how to save 10% before anything else. She listened for about 5 minutes before Lucinda called. By the time she hung up, her eyes were already full of something new. "Lucinda says budgeting's for people who don't think big," she told me. "Real wealth needs risk." I had nothing to say to that. Nothing she wanted to hear anyway. That wasn't the first time Lucinda's voice replaced mine. Over the years, it became a pattern. I offered caution. Lucinda promised returns. I offered security. Lucinda sold dreams. And Maribel always chose the shine. Now, from Joni's front window, I watched the world turn as if I'd never stepped out of it. I didn't call to warn her again. I didn't ask if she was sure. She'd made her choice. A week passed, maybe more. I lost count. I walked in the mornings, cooked my meals, read in the afternoons. Peace settled where disappointment used to sit. One afternoon, Joni handed me the remote as she went out to tend her garden. "Check the news," she said. "Looks like something big just happened in Denver." The news anchor's voice was already trembling by the time I turned up the volume. Authorities confirmed the investment firm known as Triad Futures collapsed earlier this morning following the arrest of 2 senior executives and a third-party broker believed to have ties to fraudulent pension operations across the Southwest. I didn't need to hear the name. I already knew. The footage shifted from the anchor's tight jaw to shaky cell phone video captured outside a gleaming office tower. Dozens of people crowded the entrance, most of them gray-haired, hunched, clutching papers, some holding each other as if the ground beneath them had given out. A woman screamed into the glass doors, her hands beat against them. A man beside her was on the phone, shouting, pacing, then sinking to the pavement. Behind them, security guards turned people away one by one. Then the camera swung left unsteady. And there she was. Marbel. Her hair was wild, nothing like the smooth, polished bun she always wore for work or for brunch photos. Her mascara ran in black lines down her cheeks, and her voice, usually crisp, was raw and hoarse. "No one told us you said it was safe." "You promised," Lucinda said. She pulled at the locked gate as if it might hear her. The cameraman zoomed in too close, and she turned away, covering her face with trembling hands. My breath caught. Not out of surprise. Not even grief. Just the confirmation of something I had felt in my bones the moment she made her offer over my dining table. They didn't want partnership. They wanted access. Lucinda was nowhere in sight. The clip looped again, followed by reports of frozen accounts class action suits in preparation and the staggering number, more than 300 clients affected. Over 700 were retirees. The news anchor's tone tried for sympathy, but landed in something colder. Victims are urged to contact the Attorney General's office and not attempt to retrieve funds through private action. I muted the sound. Marbel's face still filled the screen, paused mid-sob. The stillness of the image made her look younger, smaller. I reached for the remote. There was nothing to say. Not to her. Not to anyone. The world had finally delivered the kind of verdict that didn't need witnesses or commentary. I pressed the button, and the screen went black. From the kitchen, Joni called out, asking if I wanted lentil soup or grilled cheese for lunch. I answered, steady as ever, and walked over to set the table. Marbel let herself in with the spare key, the one hidden under the third stone beside the steps. It was still there like I knew it would be. Some things I left unchanged on purpose. Not out of sentiment, but so she'd have to face what changed on its own. She called my name as she stepped inside. Once, twice, then nothing. The house was quiet, quieter than I ever remembered it being when I lived there. She walked through the kitchen, her heels clicking against the tile, paused at the sink, where I used to hum while washing dishes, then turned toward the dining room. That's where she found it. The envelope sat exactly where I left it, centered, propped upright, cream-colored, with the edges softened by time. Her name written in my hand, Marbel. I'd chosen that envelope carefully, not because it was beautiful, but because it was from a box she'd given me 15 years ago for my birthday. She'd wrapped it with a ribbon, and a smile told me, "For letters you'll write someday." At the time, I hadn't known she meant to herself. She opened it slowly, unfolding the page. Marbel, I didn't walk away from you. I walked toward myself. That was all. No accusations, no listing of slights or hurts or moments she'd spoken to me like I was furniture. Just the truth written plainly. A truth I doubted she'd ever considered. I wasn't angry when I wrote it. Just done. She stood there for a long time, letter in hand, her back to the door. The dining chairs remained tucked in. The vase on the table still held dried eucalyptus. The house didn't echo, but it didn't offer comfort either. It was too clean, too final. She tried calling the number she'd always used. It didn't ring. She tried another, then email, then Joni's landline, which no longer existed. She walked through every room hoping for some clue. There wasn't one. I'd made sure of it. By the time she sat on the edge of the couch, the letter folded in her hands, it was clear she wasn't just in an empty house. She was in the silence she'd never thought would arrive. I was no longer within reach. Marbel used to answer calls with the kind of confidence that came from believing nothing could truly fall apart. Now she let most of them ring out. They weren't from clients. They weren't from Kent. They were from collectors' banks or worse, friends who had heard. Lucinda had gone quiet first. One curt email. "I'm as blindsided as you are." Then nothing. No apology. No admission. Not even a call. When Marbel drove to her house in Highlands Ranch, the gate code had changed. Kent tried to play mediator for the first day or two, but by the weekend his tone was clipped and his patience gone. "You brought this to us," he said, not even looking up from his phone. "My mom just made a suggestion. You said yes." Then came the freeze. His parents canceled the joint birthday brunch for their son. His sister uninvited Marbel from the baby shower she had helped plan. Every group text stopped. Every social invitation disappeared. The Trent family had made their verdict, and she was no longer one of them. The credit cards were maxed within 2 weeks. Her savings, what little remained after she'd followed Lucinda's reallocation plan, was tied up in a frozen account under federal review. Kent suggested they take space while he stayed at his brother's place. So Marbel found herself on Heather's couch, surrounded by toy bins and the smell of formula, pretending it was temporary. Heather, an old co-worker with more kindness than sense, let her stay without questions. At night, when the house finally went quiet, Marbel would pull the letter from her handbag and unfold it again. She read it in the dark like scripture, as if more meaning might appear the 100th time around. "I didn't walk away from you. I walked toward myself." She ran her fingers over the ink like it could open something, reverse something. She tried calling again. Nothing. She even emailed a lawyer her mother had used years ago, hoping for a forwarding address. The assistant told her the account was closed. There was no door left to knock on. Every face she turned to had either judged her, abandoned her, or offered pity. She couldn't accept. The woman who once led meetings picked centerpieces for charity galas and told others how to organize their lives, now shuffled into the kitchen with socks on a borrowed floor. She barely recognized herself. When Heather offered her a job handing out flyers for a local realtor, Marbel took it. She didn't argue. She just nodded and asked what time to start. And that night, after setting her alarm for the first time in weeks, she slipped the folded letter back under her pillow and stared at the ceiling until the light came in. The town I settled in isn't remarkable. That's what I love about it. No one here knows who Lucinda Trent is. No one asks about retirement funds or family scandals. They nod at the market wave from their porches and let you be. I write every morning now, not for anyone else, just to let the thoughts out before they settle too deep. I journal with the same pen I used to mark report cards back when I still believed in gold stars and progress rubrics for life. I stopped grading myself a long time ago. I'm not angry at Marbel. That surprises people when they ask, on the rare chance I say I have a daughter. I usually say it with a soft smile and then change the subject. I'm not vengeful. I don't want her to hurt. I just no longer feel responsible for protecting her from her own choices. I think a lot about the day she handed me that notebook. She was 5, maybe 6. She'd scribbled "to the best mom in the world" in glittery blue marker on the cover. Inside were 4 pages of drawings, stick figures holding hands, a crooked sun, a wobbly heart. She watched as I opened it, her fingers sticky with glue and pride. I remember pulling her into my lap, telling her I would keep it forever. And I did. I found that notebook when I was packing to leave the house. Tucked it into my bag, knowing it still held weight, even if she didn't remember making it. That's where I placed the letter. The only one I ever wrote her that didn't start with dear or end with love, Mom. I didn't write it to punish her. I wrote it so I wouldn't be tempted to explain myself later, so there would be no room for misinterpretation. I wanted her to know that love could coexist with refusal. That walking away doesn't mean abandoning someone, it can mean finally returning to yourself. Joni knocked that morning with her usual baked scones and news. But that day, she mentioned something else. Someone came by, asking about you, she said. A younger woman. Looked tired. Wore regret like a coat too heavy. I closed the journal and set down my pen. Joni didn't press when she told me. Saw a woman near the post office, she said, pouring the tea without looking up. Asking about someone who fit your description. Said she was visiting from out of state. Looked like she hadn't slept. I didn't say anything. Thought you'd want to know. I nodded. That was enough. No need to ask if she had dark hair pulled back too tight, or if her voice cracked when she said my name. Some questions answer themselves by how quiet the room gets when they're spoken. After Joni left, I went outside. The sun was warm but not loud. I sat on the bench under the willow tree and pulled the old notebook from my bag. It had faded more since spring, the edges curled from too much reading. I didn't open it to the letter I'd written her. I turned to the back where I'd written something new weeks earlier. Not to send, just to remind myself where the lines were. Forgiveness is optional. Dignity is not. The pen had pressed deep into the paper that day. I remembered the weight of the thought, how it came to me like a truth I'd been waiting to hear spoken aloud. I whispered it again just to feel it settle into the air. Some lessons require echo chambers to be heard. I used to think love meant showing up no matter how you were treated, that if you just stayed kind enough, patient enough, they'd see your value. But there's a love that lives on the other side of self-respect, one that doesn't perform or beg or explain. That's the kind I've come to understand. It doesn't always hold your hand. Sometimes it lets go and walks away without slamming the door. I watched a bird pick at the edge of the garden and disappear behind the lavender. The breeze shifted slightly. I closed the notebook and held it for a moment before slipping it back into my bag. That night, Joni asked if I wanted to drive into town with her to pick up some fabric. I said yes. We listened to the radio. We didn't talk about the visitor again. The next morning, the sky was soft with early clouds. I stepped onto the porch and noticed something tucked beneath the welcome mat. A note. No return address. Just one sentence written in handwriting I knew by heart. The letter sat folded at the back of Marbel's dresser drawer between a pair of socks and a coupon for free coffee she never used. She hadn't shown it to anyone. She didn't plan to. Not yet. She'd written it in pencil as if that might make it easier to erase. Mom? I didn't understand. I thought your silence meant weakness. I see now it was the loudest thing in the room. The words had come slowly, over weeks, written between dish shifts and rides home on the night bus. She lived now in a rented room above a flower shop next to a woman who sold antiques online and watered her plants at midnight. The floor creaked when anyone walked, and the heater only worked if you kicked it first, but it was hers. Just enough for a bed, a small shelf, and a folding table where she sometimes placed the old notebook. She still had it, the one she made at 5 glitter markers and all. Somehow, her mother had kept it all those years. And when she found it on the dining table after returning to the empty house, it felt like a mirror, a quiet, unflinching mirror. Marbel didn't reread her own letter often. It still hurt to admit things in full. But she did read the note her mother left once a week, folded behind the first page. I didn't walk away from you. I walked toward myself. The meaning of it changed each time she read it. That was the strange thing about words, they grew deeper, the more you allowed them to echo. Back in Santa Fe, the jasmine had started to root along the porch. I planted it late in the season, but it took stubborn and strong. A neighbor leaned on the fence one morning while I watered the edges. You know, he said there was a young woman here last fall. Asked about you. Looked like she'd traveled far. I nodded, eyes on the soil. She ever come back? Not yet, I said. He didn't press. Just tipped his cap and moved on down the sidewalk. I stayed there a while, hands still on the watering can. Not waiting, just still. If she ever comes again, I'll be home. But this time, as my full self.